rules are very good at keeping like non-sentient beings in line. But when you can really transcend the necessity for that and make really sound judgments, then I think, you know, you can look at the rules and say, all right, should I follow this or should I not follow this? It's not going to hurt myself, the game board, or the other players. Fuck yeah, I'm in.
Who is Aubrey Marcus, and how did you get to break so many rules and just become this person that you are today in your journey?
I think once you have that process, once you have this idea that, you know, you're not going to just accept the story that, you know, someone else says, you know, and that society is carved out, it applies to all things. Like, you know, as soon as you learn that way, you know, you can apply it to every way. And I think I learned that in a variety of ways from the start. First of all, my parents always, you know, had me question as many ideas and as many thoughts as I could, you know, and growing up largely in Texas, particularly for high school, there was a strong, you know, Christian religious kind of bent towards a lot of the people who I was encountering. And then for me, taking a real fresh look at that and saying like, all right, what of this makes sense? What of this doesn't make sense? You know, I think that was probably the first time I really recall, you know, deviating from the norm, where I had a lot of friends who were, you know, in this kind of traditional religious model and being like, nah, that just doesn't make sense to me. And then they would invite me on these church ski trips and shit like that. And they'd be like doing their little Bible study thing. And I'd be the annoying person in the back, like, but that doesn't make sense because of this. Like, explain this to me. And eventually they stopped inviting me because that inquiry, that logical inquiry of, does this make sense? How is this going to help me? You know, this kind of practical idea, you know, I think a lot of institutions don't like to have those questions asked. It's not just religious, it's moral, it's social, it's all of these things. They just, you know, here, accept the status quo and don't ask any questions, where I just had a different model. So I applied that from religion to spirituality to sexuality to, you know, really everything, even in business, you know, where it's like I really take a fresh look at things and I make sure that it makes sense. And it doesn't mean I have to break every norm. Some of them are great. You know, some of the traditions and some of the things really make a lot of sense. And the ones that don't. And
like,
I just make my choices from there.
Like getting engaged or like following like at stoplights.
Yeah, right. But then again, like if I'm at a stoplight and that there's like literally I can see both sides of the road. Like there's one on William Cannon as I'm coming on William Cannon to Southwest Parkway, and if it's like nighttime and I know that there would be headlights and there's nobody there and I'm at that stoplight, I'm not stopping.
So you break some rules once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like rules are very good at keeping like non-sentient beings in line. But when you can really transcend the necessity for that and make really sound judgments, then I think, you know, you can look at the rules and say, all right, should I follow this or should I not follow this? Does it make sense? You know, or does it not? Is it going to hurt anybody if I don't follow it? And that's ultimately my own moral code. Like, will this help or will this hurt myself or the game board or the, you know, the other people playing the game?
Yeah.
And if it's not going to hurt me, the game board, which, you know, like the environment, for example, which collectively hurts everybody. If it's not going to hurt myself, the game board, or the other players, fuck yeah, I'm in. I go for it.
What is someone that everyone that's listening today could do to break some rules, or at least start evaluating it?
Well, I think, you know, start looking at what things where you've told yourself no. Like, think of yourself like the character in the most amazing video game that you've ever just downloaded, right? And you're the avatar, you're the player in that video game, right? And so you're looking at like, man, this is a fucking amazing world and game board. Like, what buttons have you been afraid to press and why? Like, what buttons have you been afraid to press and why have you been afraid to press them? Has it been because someone has told you those? Have you really done the research? Have you talked to people who've pressed those buttons? Is it going to hurt anybody? Like, reassess all of your no's and then figure out like, all right, maybe I can start squeezing in a few yeses and see what makes sense. I think, you know, I just had him in for my podcast, the Aubrey Marcus podcast, Jamie Wheel, who wrote the book with Stephen Kotler, Stealing Fire. And he talks about ecstasis, which is pretty much any time that you're out of your own head, you know, accessing selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, richness, from a psychedelic state to a sexual experience to flow state to meditation, all of these different ways that we get out of our head, even listening to music or dancing. And then really looking at these as ways to, transcend ordinary reality and experience something truly magical, and figure out your reasons for saying no to all of these things. Some of them may make sense, like, yeah, maybe don't do heroin, like maybe that's a button you shouldn't press. Like, there's pretty good evidence that that's a bad, maybe don't do crack, maybe methamphetamine isn't the right button to press, but maybe, psilocybin in a nature hike is, or maybe
shrooms, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some kind of, conscious form of sexuality is the right button that you want to press. Maybe reworking some of these mental programs. So I think that's really the areas to start look where your taboos are, look where you're just accepting things for momentum's sake or your parents' sake or the things that your social group says, and say, do I really want to follow that, or do I want to explore the other side? And just give yourself permission.